mode. I think there's a. Is there a note mode? Oh, yes. There's a way to see.
Oh, maybe I don't need this. Nope. So hopefully I remember what to say. So, okay. It's a break. So what is this? Clap once if you can hear me. Hi, I'm Kathy Bronner. I'm the formative evaluator for the AGEP-NC project. I'm actually the second formative evaluator for the project. I took over in 2020. If you may know me as the survey lady, because I do surveys. I do some other stuff, but if you've ever gotten email from me about surveys, that's what I do. So what I'm going to do today is talk to you about the survey results from cohorts 1 and 2. So how many, tell me, I just want to get a sense of the room. Who's from NC State? Okay, who's from NC A&T? Wow, okay, who's from UNC Charlotte? Okay, and who's from cohort 1? Okay, cohort 2? Nobody from cohort 2. Cohort 3? Okay, sorry you guys, you're left out. So cohort 3, we only have entry survey data for you guys, so next fall we'll have exit survey. So this is for cohorts 1 and 2, entry and exit. So it doesn't include cohort 0, which are people who started and didn't finish, and it doesn't include cohort 3 because we don't have any exit survey data, which is kind of too bad because that's where all the engineers are, and I got to tell you, engineers are different. But it is what it is. All right, let's see what I have. Whoops, that's not. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about a little bit today is the methods and population for the surveys. And I'm just going to concentrate, there's a ton of data. If you filled out the survey yourself, you remember there were a lot of questions. I'm not going to go over all of them. I'm going over the ones that kind of had some interesting results that were different for different groups of people. So we're talking about department priorities regarding diversity. That's what the fellows do. Environment for underrepresented students, very top level of that. A little bit about faculty mentoring, teaching opportunities that students report, and the doctoral students' career plans. Oops, don't press it too hard. Okay, so y'all raised your hands. This is who's in the surveys. Students and faculty from cohorts 1 and cohort 2. And cohort 1 at NC State started before it did at Charlotte and A&T. And then cohort 2, everybody started at the same time. So this will give you some idea of the respondents. So you can see not much of a surprise. NC State data is going to kind of dominate because they've got more people. Also, we've got some small numbers, like in cohort 2 at NC A&T, only 4 faculty responded. So because of that, I'm not going to be able to cut all the data every way you might want to, or how I might have wanted to do it. It just doesn't work out. Sorry about that, especially when, like up here, we only have 2 Black, Hispanic, and Native students at UNC Charlotte, so I couldn't cut them all these ways. So a lot of times you're going to see groups cut, summarized together that maybe you wish I could divide up, and I can't. I also want to do a little bit about nomenclature here because of the way the grant works. Oh, okay, B plus H plus N. Now, I learned from Lisa that you should name people and not call them underrepresented minorities, and her very excellent presentation about why. I encourage you to go find online. But I have tried very hard to name every group. So we have Black, Hispanic, and Native peoples, which would include American Indians, Native Hawaiians, Native Alaskans, and so forth. I put them all in one group because altogether there's about eight of them. So that's a group that other people would call URMs, AGEP populations. White and Asian, U.S. citizens who are white and Asian, that is not underrepresented in STEM. International students are considered separately. Other, no answer, I'm going to explain in a second. And then for faculty, I assumed they were all allowed to work here, and therefore they're either citizens or permanent residents. So that's where you get that. The reason, right here, these people, faculty were not asked their demographics in the cohort 1 entry survey. Students were not asked their citizenship in the cohort 1 entry survey at UNC Charlotte and NC State. Just the way it is. So what do I know about those people? 141 were in Charlotte and NC State. Of these 141 people, 21 reported being Black or Hispanic, 85 reported being white or Asian, 4 said other, and 31 either left it blank or said they didn't want to answer. The remaining 71 just didn't answer. Basically, given the exit survey population, I figure among these entry surveys, about 11 of the 21 are Black or Hispanic U.S. citizens. I forgot, I had it on my notes, about 55 are white or Asian U.S. citizens. The rest are international. So for that reason, that group is always kind of set aside because when I looked at it, people who are international, who have underrepresented ethnicities, have a different experience from people who are U.S. citizens who have different ethnicities. So that's why they're pulled aside in all of or many of the charts that you'll see by ethnicity. Okay, so I want to talk about department priorities and culture first. And I think as you're all all the people here are fellows, right? Most of you?
Fellows, chairs, teams.
Fellows, chair. Okay, great. All right, so we asked a question. We asked a question about the priority in your department to recruit, to increase the number of, not recruit necessarily, underrepresented doctoral students. And we asked about retaining. And actually the recruitment numbers were like flat across, so I didn't show you this. But again, we're talking about domestic underrepresented students. And you can see over here, within a school, faculty didn't see a lot of changes, except at A&T. It actually got a little better at A&T, where the bottom boxes are sort of low priority or don't know. So these top 2 boxes, but within a school, it's about nothing changed much as far as faculty's perceptions of the department priority to retain underrepresented students. Sad but true. However, the faculty did notice stuff. So even if they don't think the priorities changed, they did notice at each school, the top box here got bigger across the 3 institutions. You guys see? Okay. The top boxes got bigger. So even though they don't think the department cares much more than they used to, they do think that the departments are doing more to advance the cause of underrepresented students and they're remaining in the departments. So I guess that's a good thing. I'd like to hope that's a good thing. Also, what I'll call the bad boxes, the ones on the bottom, have gotten smaller. So in that case, so I think they're noticing your work. For those of you who are fellows, I think they're noticing your work, and that's a great thing. So, and students actually kind of notice the same thing. So maybe that's good that faculty and students, we were talking earlier about being in touch with what your students think. If you kind of look at the top 2 boxes within each group of students, their boxes sort of move in the same direction as the faculty boxes. So now here I had enough people, so we've got NC, wow, NC A&T, this is cohort 1 entry and exit, cohort 2 entry and exit, cohort 1 entry and exit each school. So you can see how this is. I know these are dense and I'm really glad this is a gigantic screen. But the students things got a little better between the entry and the exit for the students in terms of their noticing whether their department encourages demographic diversity. So that's a good thing. However, different groups see it differently. And they see it differently over time. So now I'm looking at, I had to combine the entry and exit again. We talked about the small numbers. So for instance, at A&T, what I'll call the bad boxes down here got smaller, but the good box got smaller too for the Black, Hispanic, and Native students at A&T. So kind of a mixed picture there. At NC State, it actually got way better because like the bad boxes, the blue and the greens, was pretty darn tall. I mean, we're looking at like 55% at the entry survey, but by the exit survey, it got better. I know I'm in your way, I'm sorry. And this is the NA, so these people kind of split into other people in the entry survey. And then at Charlotte, so the feelings were less intense, but The bad boxes at least stay the same size. So there you go. Now you don't have that many underrepresented students there. I think the whole number in the exit survey is like about 6. So there's 6 in one group and 12 in the other. So yeah, not that big. But anyway, and then the other demographic groups, it's interesting it depends on where you're underrepresented. So the white students, the white and Asian students at A&T, things got a little worse for them, but let's see, also a little worse at state. So hopefully you did not make things better for the underrepresented students at the expense of the majority of the white and Asian students. So anyway, it's important, I think, and I know you all, when I gave you your data, you don't get the demographics because your numbers are too small, sorry about that. But it's important to at least have an understanding of how different people are reacting to the environment that they face. Okay, and I guess this is also good news, I think, about welcoming. Would your students find, you asked the faculty, would your students find your department welcoming and supportive? And most people said, eh. At the predominantly white institutions, the answers were a little less positive than at NC about whether the students would find the department supportive. But the students said that their department is a welcoming place to learn and work. And again, they kind of agreed with the faculty, particularly at NC State at the entry survey, almost exactly the same, but there's improvement between entry and exit. This is overall students, and huge improvements at Charlotte. So apparently a lot of good work has happened as far as making your departments welcoming places for everyone. Oh, sorry, this is URM students, even better. This box here is just for URM students. So the URM students actually, you got better at Charlotte, good job. You actually got better at State, also good job. And at A&T, it stayed kind of about the same, which is not that much of a surprise, I guess. So, before I move on to advising, do y'all have any questions about the environment?
So that's cohort 1 and 2?
Yes. So this is cohort 1 and 2, just U.S. citizen underrepresented students. So, yay, things are better. This is maybe about 90 people. Let's see. I think this is about 90 people altogether. 109 people altogether. So that's who is in that chart spread out. Okay, so moving on to the next goal, or another goal of AGEP North Carolina, is to improve advising and mentoring. This is Lisa's bailiwick to research it, and I hope Lisa can offer any other insight to what the surveys are telling us. So faculty are pretty confident about their ability to advise students. And what we have here, if you recall the survey, was how comfortable are you, or how confident are you advising students generally? And the other question is, how comfortable are you advising students who are different from you? So in various ethnic categories. So they could be different race, different gender, different so forth. Faculty are a pretty confident bunch overall. In their ability to advise students. You know yourselves, you're pretty confident. But somewhat less confident advising people who are different from you, whatever you are, advising people who are different. And this is maybe where Lisa might want to jump in on the confidence. At some level, so overall, the good box, this is the really good box here is the top box. So it seemed to have gotten worse over time. If you look at this overall in the entry and the overall in the exit, and the overall in the entry and the overall in the exit, they kind of got less confident over time. So it could have been you don't know what you don't know, and then you start learning about it and you realize what you didn't know. And also, but more confident, interestingly, for people who were different. Well, it was different by school. So over at A&T, the different got better. At NC State, let's see, different here, different there. Kind of stayed the same, got a little worse. Charlotte stayed about the same. So I don't know if that means that the mentoring training was working or not working. Marcia looks dismayed.
Well, I do notice that the green is getting bigger.
Yes, that means they're only somewhat confident. So the top box is very confident. There are not many not confidence, but I guess that comes with being a faculty member. When the green is getting better, it means that they're getting less confident. Now, again, it could be help them learn what they don't know, and therefore now they're always worried about doing the wrong thing, right, until they internalize it. And Lisa, do you have any input into this or thoughts about it?
Yeah, I just said, we found very similar things. I didn't do, any exit stuff, any entry, that when they first were started. But on the qualitative piece that was paired with our survey, what we were finding was that people were beginning to talk about the fact that on the overall in the survey, faculty appeared really confident, but when you actually talk about what they know and what they think they know or how they're going to do it, they were just expressing things that were so not congruent with best practices, right? And so you could see that even though they, on the survey, would say yes, we're less confident, their qualitative data showed us that you're completely out of touch. Like you don't even have enough, you're not even able to verbalize the things that one would expect, in terms of the skills. So I think that we're very, together in terms of what you were finding and what we found.
Okay. So I guess this says there's still some work to do.
Yeah.
Yes, Matt.
So, as a faculty member, I think what may be going on is you attend a mentoring workshop or other event, and then you go, oh, I didn't even think about that, or gosh, this is not something I've been doing, I need to change, that sort of feeling.
Yeah, so there's room, and people are never going to be totally great at it, but at least this gives you some idea about where to go. The other thing I wanted to say about your own data is you can look at your data. If you look at this by departments, the bars are going to be all over the place, really different. So every department is going to have kind of a different look from this average. This will mask a lot of good things and also a lot of less good things. So I encourage you to look at your data if you haven't already. For students, so this is looking at the student ethnicities, it's gotten a little worse for the underrepresented students over time, which is too bad. Whoops. So it's kind of gotten better and gotten worse. So the good bar here has gotten bigger, but the bad bars have gotten bigger also. So it really took it out of the good, out of the people who are wishy-washy. They're more likely to make a decision, and more of them made a decision towards I'm not as happy as I was in the entry survey about the relationship with their advisor. So maybe either the advisors aren't internalizing the training properly, or maybe a pandemic was real, and there's no way really to know what the impact was, but it didn't seem to have affected international students very much, or white and Asian students very much, but it did seem to impact the underrepresented students more, and as far as their advising relationships. The other thing is this NA group is pretty tall, is in the bad, higher up, the bad's bigger, so if you could figure out how to sort these people into the various entry boxes, the results might have been a little different. So here's another one. So we asked a number of questions about what ways, as an advisor, how do you help your students? Do you give them research guidance? Do you let them go to conferences, present their material at your university, and so forth? The one that had the biggest gaps was this about helping students author papers on their own work, on their own research, not theirs. Faculty, of course, believe that they're faculty believe that they're helping. Faculty believe they're helping their students all the time, especially at the research goals. So NC State faculty feel like it seems like we're just like in those papers all the time. Students maybe don't think that so much, especially the underrepresented students. So you can see that here, The underrepresented students are getting less help than the white and Asian students, and way less help, interestingly, than the international students. And that's terrible that it was worse at the exit survey, I think. So they seldom or never get any help co-authoring a paper on their research. So even though maybe the relationships aren't all that bad, I think this is an area where the people making decisions need to really think about how different students are being treated. Okay, the next thing, I need to keep track of time. But anyway, preparing for the professoriate. So the purpose of AGEP-NC, or the purpose of AGEP, big AGEP, is to prepare students who are underrepresented in STEM for professorial positions. And it's nice to do a lot of other things, but that's the important part as far as the people in Washington are concerned. So we have some things to look at here. And I realize that having a teaching assistant position or whatever isn't necessarily something that's important to prepare you for a professor job in every discipline, but knowing about teaching could be important, or an opportunity for students to learn about what it means to be a teacher, what it means to plan a class. Is this something I want to do? Just the exposure. Underrepresented students have fewer teaching opportunities than their peers. So this would be just filling in for like a class or a recitation, like the instructor goes away for a conference and needs somebody to fill in. This is teaching a semester-long course. So again, the underrepresented students, fortunately it got better between the entry and the exit, teaching a semester-long course. I don't know if that was at the expense of the white Asian students because their bars like moved in kind of opposite directions. And then international students actually get a lot of experience teaching semester-long courses. And I know this can open a huge can of worms, right? Some of it has to do with how are you paying for your education, some of it has to do with what's important in your department, some of it has to do with career plan, all kinds of things. But you know, exposure is something that should be considered for students. If we're trying to encourage students to take on professor roles, then let them know what it is to be a professor. And it's certainly possible that being a student during a pandemic made them run for the hills about being a professor. Actually, the pandemic wasn't a bad thing. So how confident are students in completing their degrees? Pretty confident still. It actually stayed more stable than I might have expected given the pandemic. Overall, students at entry and exit. So the NC State group, the first NC State cohort 1 wasn't really impacted by the pandemic. It was towards the end of that cohort's time in the program. Cohort 2 was impacted a lot. And then cohort 3 is kind of coming out of it on the other end. But I thought it was interesting that the confidence didn't really change much for the various groups over time. There's a big difference by institution though. Like NC students are much more confident about completing their degrees than NC State students are. Or, than NC State students are. Particularly the underrepresented students, whereas the white and Asian students are about the same at all the other schools. So again, I think this speaks to NC as an HBCU, and perhaps, if I remember right, and nobody's here to call me out on it, what is it, culture of caring? Is that, they have like a motto, something like that? Or excellence with caring? Something. Anyway, that may be showing up right here for the Black and Hispanic students at NC. Okay, I'll let you guys sit with this for a second because I know it's really dense. So, interest in academic careers. This is what do you want to do when you get out of school? This was essentially the question. And we looked at it for both by ethnicity here, and also by how long they had been in their program. So have they been in their program for 3 years or fewer, or more than 3 years? So these are the dissertation level students, and these are the students who are still taking classes, basically. Now, first you think, oh no, for the people in the program for only verse 25. Anyway, so over there, the entry students for the Black and Hispanic and Native students, almost 25% of the ones who've been in their program 3 years or less were interested in an academic career. And the more than 3 years, that's actually a 0 box, because the green box, the green bar is a different group. So they're like 0. So they go from the early career students, yes, I want to be a professor, and then they don't. Then when they get older, whatever you do to them while they're in your program, you kill it. Sorry about that. That's at the entry survey, though. So this is before. This is actually not a bad picture. I can't use my pointer anymore. So, but in the exit survey, it stayed the same. So the early career students and the later career students, their bars are the same height at the exit survey. So congratulations, you stopped killing them over here and started doing better here. And then I think one impact of the pandemic over here is that more and more people want to get industrial jobs, usually at the expense of postdocs, interestingly, as opposed to a professorial job, the way this lays out. And I'll be happy to share these. Yes.
Can you remind me what was the bin sizes for each one of these?
Let's see. So this entry survey, Black, Hispanic, and Native students, is about 40 people,
Okay.
and then about
Nice.
60-ish in the exit. So the numbers were actually big enough. I tried not to present anything when the numbers were too small. It makes
Sure,
yes.
yeah.
So would you not consider postdocs in academia to be like on the professoriate? Because I would consider that kind of in the pipeline for professoriate.
Yes, I would consider it in the professoriate. But still, even if you add this plus
Right,
this.
I agree. I just thought you were saying that one
Yeah.
wasn't.
So, yeah, I've organized this by like more professoriate to less. So you've got straight to academia, postdoc then academia, job then academia, then job, then postdoc then job, and this is other. So some people said they wanted to be entrepreneurs, some people had already had some sort of side hustle that they were going to continue with, and so forth. But I do think the pandemic, as we get to these exit surveys, here's where I think the pandemic had an impact, in that the people who wanted to go into business, those bars got a lot taller.
How much do you think, though, is it pandemic or other socio factors that are impacting it? As far as, culturally as a country, the view towards academia has changed dramatically, especially over the last 5 years or so. So were you able to tease that, or had anybody looked at that with the data?
One of my projects for next year is going to be to look at the comments. Although we didn't really ask them specifically about their career plans in the comments, we asked them much more about what the environment was like in their department and talk about your relationship with your advisor and things like that. So at this point, we can only speculate about why people want to go into industry. It could be seeing what it was like to be in academia during a pandemic. It could be that, because I thought it was interesting over here at the exit, the postdoc opportunities, like the postdoc jobs, both of them got a lot smaller. The bars got smaller. So maybe they just decided they were going to go straight to work and not try to get a postdoc. Again, that's very discipline specific, as I understand it. Some disciplines, if you're going to postdoc, then just forget your life. And others, like some kind of engineering job or computer science job, you can go straight into industry. You can go straight to whatever you want to do without a postdoc. So that's very discipline specific.
I was going to just comment that there also might be some learning about what paths are available. Like I'm noticing the job in industry, then in academia, and then that goes down perhaps when they learn that's not as likely a route to come back into academia, right? Like through mentoring. So there also just might not be a change in attitude, but like learning what paths actually exist in different disciplines.
Absolutely. It could be that the advisors are helping out with that. It could be the advisors aren't helping out with that. So it could be they just discover more as they get into a particular area. I know that the field I'm in now has nothing to do with what I started out when I started my PhD program. And most people I know who go into industry and then go into academic careers are doing that after they've retired from industry. It's not like I'm going to do 5 years in industry and then go get my academic job. It's usually like, I finished my 30 years in whatever company, and now I'm going to go into academia. So quickly, so a few conclusions to draw from this. Faculty don't seem to think that their departments have changed their priorities with respect to retaining underrepresented students, but they've noticed that something's being done. So that's, I think, a kernel of hope, something we can latch on to. Faculty and underrepresented students are in general accord as to whether the department is welcoming for URM students, and it appears to have improved, especially at the predominantly white institutions over time. So that's a good thing. White, Asian, and international students are given somewhat more research guidance. They get more help authoring papers. They get more teaching experiences than Black, Hispanic, and Native students. And this may have a compounding effect, too, and lead to lower confidence. It's not just the one thing. It's not just the teaching or just the authoring papers or just the research guidance, but all of these things sort of piling on for students may have a compounding effect that we need to be aware of. Underrepresented students are about as interested in academic careers as white nation students and more than international students, but they get fewer teaching opportunities than either group. And departments, you all have your own data. You can look at it, except I'm sorry I didn't give you the demographics. So, I don't know how I'm doing on time. It might be time to turn it over to Amy for the summative evaluation. We can talk about that later. Thank you.
Can you share these presentations we
Sure.
saw?
And we're also videoing, so if you want to sit and watch the entire thing, so, but we have all of the different cohorts have their data, the fellows have their data, we are assuming they're sharing that, but we can get to all of these.
Yeah, when you have your own data, I really encourage you to read your comments. Even though I had to redact some of them, there's a lot of really good stuff in there.
All right, I'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Ruth. I think I've met most of you, or at least many of you. I think I'm the third summative evaluator for this project, but I'm really enjoying it, so I really appreciate being a part of this. I'm located in Durham, North Carolina. I've done work with all of the institutions involved prior to being part of this project. The goal was just, I want to briefly talk about the summative evaluation goal, but I'll start with talking about summative evaluation. This evaluation is really meant to understand what are the impacts or outcomes, depending what language you use, of this project. Not just what you did, but what effect it had, what changed as a result. And Kathy did a great job of presenting some data on the changes, and I'm going to discuss some of the data I've collected around this idea of the changes. But I think it should, just as a reminder, start from what the goal of the AGEP-NC Alliance, and it was to develop, implement, and study a model. So again, this is really being looked at holistically as a model for creating institutional, department level, and faculty change, again, to promote historically underrepresented minority U.S. citizens who are in STEM programs and doctoral programs, and help them progress into faculty positions. Again, this idea of what is a URM, or underrepresented minority student, is something that NSF defined for this project to represent those that are U.S. citizens and include, as Kathy said, Native Americans, Native Hawaiians, African American students, Hispanic students, etc. So with that, there is a logic model, and that was presented. We have revised it a little bit, maybe just kind of shorted up a bit. I don't think we made any great changes, but just so you can see and remind it a little bit of what the kind of steps for, logic models are classically linear, even though we know life is never linear. And so this comes out, to be very linear. This happens, and this happens, and this happens. We know that's not true, but, some way we can really present it. And this actually guided the evaluation, both the formative and the summative evaluation. And it, identifies, again, the goals and what the outcomes are. And they are short-term, medium, and long-term outcomes. And so when I get to discussing where the outcomes are, some of these long-term outcomes even medium-term ones, there may not have been enough time yet to really assess whether they're happening. That does not mean that they aren't happening or will not happening. It just means that currently, it's a little bit early to tell. And so here's the rest of it, just so that you all, as usual, get a flavor for what it was. There were 2 overarching summative evaluation questions that guided the work I did. How well is the Alliance working in terms of supporting change among its members and other institutions? Because remember, this is a model. And then to what degree are these changes actually occurring as a result of promoting historically underrepresented minority U.S. citizens, promoting them, supporting them, engaging them. This project is not about recruiting them, retaining them, etc. But again, the focus of this project is not on recruiting. And so there's an evaluation plan. The formative and summative were kind of combined. The summative are really the parts that are in blue. So I just wanted to share that with you. You see the overarching evaluation questions, and then looking at some of these changes, changes in negative interactions, increased use of best practices and mentoring, improved department climate. I think we get a lot of these changes in the interactions. Improved graduate student progress towards and completion of degrees, and then entry into the professoriate, and then of course adaptation and adoption of this model by other departments and at other universities. So that just gives you a little bit of a rundown of some of the things we're looking at with this evaluation. So a lot of the data that have been collected, most formally have been collected in the last couple of months. I conducted site visits to each of the institutions in early December 2022. I interviewed fellows, faculty, department chairs, deans, provosts, and the PIs. And this just gives you an overview, a little bit of the numbers to get an idea. What you'll really notice, I think, is I did do a lot of interviews with deans, department chairs, provosts. I interviewed all the current PIs. That really provided a lot of the context that is, I think, critical to understanding and being able to sum up where this project stands. What was harder was getting in touch with fellows. That was a lot harder. And so because of that, you can see this little participation, especially by early fellows, cohort 1 fellows in particular. Here are some of the counts, so you can see it's split up by cohort and institution. Really hard in North Carolina A&T to get in touch with fellows. As a result of that, I am following up with them now. I talked to 4 fellows this past week. I think I've got 3 or 4 set for this coming week. I wish someone was here from A&T because I really do need help with getting in touch with fellows. I am now just cold calling people. If you will not answer my email, I will not be undone. I will persist. I used to really do a lot of cycling, and I was called the, I forget, it was something like, I like to think it was magnificent mosquito, but it was something about mosquito and being annoying because I'm a pester. Because I will stick with you on a bike ride no matter how much I'm dying. I will cling to the back of the bike to carry me over 100 miles. And well, I'm applying this now to my evaluation work. I'll let you know how it works out. Interviews have 3 main purposes. To understand the commitment, development, and support at department, college, and university leadership around supporting underrepresented minority students in these doctoral programs in STEM. Identifying drivers and barriers to this kind of support and whether it was happening or why it isn't happening. And then to ascertain the function of this group as an alliance, including its impact really as a model on other institutions and departments. And so those were kind of the overarching goals. I did not include my interview protocols. I will say that in the, they're like the interview protocols, if you looked at them, I think you could say, oh, these questions fall under, these 3 main categories. But I also included a survey in my interview. I surveyed people, and I asked fellows in particular, because they were the ones most knowledgeable. I asked them, on a scale of, an agreement level, 1 to 4, strongly disagree to strongly agree, has, the climate has changed, for the better for underrepresented minority students? What is your level of agreement? New forms of mentoring are taking place. What is your level of agreement? Underrepresented minority doctoral students are progressing further in the program than they have in the past. What is your agreement? So I've tried to also get at some of the data that Kathy is also getting at to understand where things are, and then use that as jumping off points for discussion. Really, my goal in interviewing is to ask a question and listen and try to understand. And so that's what I've tried to really do. This is 3 different institutions, and context matters, so it's a little bit hard to say what's happening at the 3 institutions without really saying individually at each institution. And so I am going to talk about them individually because different things have happened because of these contexts. First context is, of course, again, what I'm saying, this type of institution. You all know better than I do. NC State, Research 1, UNC Charlotte, Research 2, North Carolina, A&T, well respected HBCU. They have really different structures, even though they are all under the North Carolina University system. But those structures really affect what happened at these different universities. And so I'll get into the details of some of them as I continue. Diversity initiatives at the chancellor's level is evident across all 3 universities. I think that's important to understand because that has been a driver of this work. None of this work was done without there being something driving it, even at a larger level, even at a different level. And so one thing I heard, when I talked at NC State, more than one person talked about the murder of George Floyd and how that made them really start re-looking at some of their work. Not that they weren't already looking at it, but I think it made them perhaps decide to move this work faster, to really get it going, that sort of thing. North Carolina A&T is steeped in this kind of work. This is their mission, certainly at the undergraduate level. I mean, this is what they are predicated on, working with underrepresented minority students. So those have been drivers. This kind of support has been a driver of the work of the AGEP-NC Alliance. And it's interesting, these initiatives coming from the top down, and there is a top-down structure, you all know better than I do at these universities, all first focus on undergraduates, then faculty, and now at graduate students. This work has been done to varying degrees at the different institutions and on different time frames, for sure. And that, again, affects a little bit about how far these institutions were able to support some of this AGEP North Carolina work. The focus on graduate students appears to have started earliest, I think, at NC State, from what I can undertell. Just a little bit earlier compared to UNC Charlotte, and then compared to North Carolina A&T. And it's interesting, especially across a lot of the departments at NC State, I hear of DEI committees. There's some of this at UNC Charlotte, but many of the departments where there were fellows at NC State also had DEI committees. And so that affected also how the AGEP work was actually done, the actual kind of mechanics of it, if you will. And I'll talk more about that in detail in a little bit. In my context continue. Diversity means something different in North Carolina A&T at the graduate level. And it also means different things, I think, in all institutions at the graduate level. Well, let me just speak first about North Carolina A&T. There was a really strong opinion among everyone I talked there that when they are speaking about diversity, and this is true actually at the undergraduate level too, they're really talking about women, people with different sexual orientations, religious background, etc. They're really not looking at race or ethnicity. They're really looking at different sorts of factors. And so it does not matter what NSF defined to some degree, you know, at least for sure in the broader work being done at North Carolina A&T, they're really looking at being more welcoming to all students, with it being beyond this race ethnicity, which is the main focus of NSF. That said, at NC State and UNC, Charlotte, it really is on African American, I meant to add Hispanic graduate students and faculty, as well as Native American, although it is interesting how often they fall to just speaking about African American graduate students, which I found quite interesting, and I did not know what to think of that, even though, and I think that's why I wrote that when I know it is also Hispanic and Native Americans, of which we have a lot in this state. They did not speak about gay, lesbian, transsexual, bisexual. They did not speak about that. They did not speak about religion. They did speak about international students. And so this is especially true for a lot of the departments that have very few, if any, underrepresented minority students as defined by NSF. And they started thinking about, well, what about our students who are women? That did come up, but then more frequently about international students. You know, and often by that they also meant students that are of different, say, than the Western culture or English language background. Changeover in PIs at North Carolina A&T, this is something that occurred. I do not think it occurred very well. I think the former PI was very busy trying to juggle 2 jobs, you know, leaving while trying to get things in order and starting a new job. And I don't believe that the changeover was very informative. I think it was more about nuts and bolts, maybe not more mechanical issues than broader issues. And I do think that there's a difference in understanding of the 2 PIs as, again, to that issue of what it means to be underrepresented in the graduate programs at North Carolina A&T. Now, you can argue that, well, wait a minute, you know, it should be this, it shouldn't be that. I'm just letting you know how people think over there. And so I'm just sharing with you, you know, whether you agree or not that the focus should be on gender and different sexual orientations or what have you. You know, they have international students, they need to have more underrepresented minority U.S. citizen students. I'm just saying how they're looking at it. And I think that is something that came out quite clear. And then lastly, another thing in terms of context, the selection of the fellows really matter. And fellows that I've talked to range greatly from department chairs to those that do not have tenure, are unlikely to get tenure, those who did not have tenure but were in the process of going for tenure when they were fellows, some that are just long-term faculty, some that are underrepresented minorities themselves and or women and or international, or some that were white males. But one thing that really stands out is how well that fellow is considered within his or her department can have a real impact as to whether departments want to listen to what they have to say and understand what they're having to say. The other context, before I get to COVID impacts, the other context is deans. You know, do the deans or the department chairs, both of them, do they care about this issue or not? Is this forefront on their mind or not? And again, whether that's true or not has a big impact on how this work plays out, and particularly how the faculty view the work that the fellow is doing. COVID had a major impact on this project. And, you know, probably the biggest way is that for the fellows, especially cohort 2, I think they may have started in person and then went virtual, but for a large part of it was virtual. Their meetings, their sense-making process was done in a virtual environment. Their meeting with faculties were done often in virtual environments. there are other things really pulling them, certainly pulling deans and department chairs in many different directions. One thing I thought, one of the comments that was just so telling was, one of the fellows said, you know, this kind of work, this kind of infusion of the sense making into the faculty, that really doesn't happen at the faculty meetings. So it was all right that that was virtual, but we just didn't have the kind of classic office cooler chats where you talk maybe more informally about some of the things that are being raised, where I don't want to say you convert people, but you get people on your side, you get them to understand why it's an issue. You can do that passionate personal plea to people and say, you know, look at why this really is important, consider this. And I think without some of that happening with people being out of the offices with COVID, I think that did have an impact on some of this work and how the work was done. So let me talk a little bit now about my findings. And I'm going to talk about my evidence, and I say strong evidence, some evidence, no weak evidence, waiting on data. I'm really, some of it there's real strong evidence. I really am waiting on data because the fellows are the ones who can most closely talk about what has happened. I was a little surprised meeting with some department chairs who did not know who their fellows were. Some department chairs that did not know what was in the department diversity plan. Not so surprising as you got beyond that, deans, chancellors, etc. But it seemed to me that the fellows especially could speak to what happened, you know, around the work closest to them. I certainly have not spoken to enough fellows at A&T to really understand, but you know, the idea was that fellows would be identified, apply to be a part of this cohort, and then engage in this cohort learning and sense making. Really try to understand what this could be like for underrepresented minority students. And someone tell me the time. I don't have it up here and how we're doing on time.
You have about 7 minutes.
Okay, that should work. There was really strong evidence that this occurred at NC State and UNC Charlotte for the most part, even though, you know, again, maybe it wasn't as great or, you know, was maybe not as cohort based when it was virtual, but you know, for the most part, that's what the fellows did. They spoke about the things they read, the people they heard from, and just how eye-opening it was to them. So I feel really strongly that that part did occur. After that, fellows were meant to go in and share their learning with their departments to support the departmental sense making. And there's some mixed evidence that this occurred, and mostly fellows tried to do this. But some departments, it just never did happen. There was time it was never made for them, or they hosted sessions and nobody showed up, especially virtual, even if they were in person, or asked to be invited and speak about it. So it really did depend a little bit on the department. Again, going back to that department's investment in it. If the department chair is invested in it, mostly the department is invested in it. If the dean of that college is invested in it, then the department chairs are and the department is. So again, that top down really impacts this. So there's mixed evidence that the sense making actually occurred. In some cases, departments were way on board with this, but in other cases, not so much. And that, so, and it varied, you know, similarly across the universities. Fellows in departments draft departmental diversity plans, which are ultimately approved by the department. First of all, in most cases, fellows are the ones who drafted the plans. In a lot of cases, they drafted them with the graduate program advisor, unless they were that person, or with input from the department chair. In some cases where there were DEI committees, they tended to work really closely with those DEI committees. So it just really depended. Right now, it seems that fellows either did this on their own or they did this in groups kind of equally at NC State and UNC Charlotte. Right now, from what I know at A&T, it was done a lot on their own. That there wasn't that much, at least buy-in at the grad level. with the departments really being engaged and helping, even if they wrote it on their own, did departments provide feedback? In some cases, yes, but in some cases, no. Oops, I didn't mean to hit that. There we go. It is important to understand that right now there are only 7 approved plans, 5 from NC State, 2 from UNC Charlotte, across 33 departments. Really, that's 27 departments because cohort 3 plans are not yet due or are just being due, and et cetera. So right now, 7 plans out of 27 departments. It's not to say that things aren't happening at departments where plans were maybe not formally adopted. Again, governance being different in different departments and colleges, et cetera, that kind of department adoption in some places is just a little bit of a check mark, and in other places it is a real process, red tape. It's not the fellow's fault. This has been, bogged down. So, but it is something to consider that there's only 7 out of 27 departments right now with actual plans. Department diversity plans are implemented. Again, we have mixed evidence at NC State and UNC Charlotte right now. Again, I have not interviewed any of the cohort 1 fellows at A&T. So right now there's no evidence. I really should probably have waiting on data for A&T. I just haven't been able to reach anybody. The department diversity plans are being implemented in some cases, in particular where you had faculty involved, DEI committees involved, department chairs, graduate study coordinators, and a fellow involved. That implementation is occurring among different groups within the faculty. In other cases, it is the fellow and the fellow alone that is implementing things. I had one fellow say, our plan is never going to be approved because of red tape, but I went ahead, and since I'm the graduate studies advisor, I went ahead and did this, this, and that. Or one fellow said, my department just didn't seem really interested in it, but I decided I would go ahead and start this, this, and that. In other cases, it was, this group over here has started doing this, and then myself and the DEI committee, we've done this, and then this other group of professors have done this. So it looks really different as to how this implementation has occurred. And in some cases, there's been very little implementation. So again, that kind of mixed evidence and what it looks like does vary quite differently. Actions taken by the department as guided by the Department Diversity Plan results in improved climates for underrepresented minority adoptable students and faculty. That is a question I asked directly. I'm still waiting on data to really understand. I think it's pretty nuanced across the 3 universities. But I think there is some evidence that this is occurring. I certainly would not say that it's not occurring. There's definitely been some changes that at least the fellows that I've talked to believe are having those positive impacts. So, but I still wanted to get a little bit more data before I addressed it. Here's some examples of these activities: co-mentoring, advising, so trying to get graduate students involved with a greater diversity of faculty, especially after COVID. Trying to get them involved in a greater diversity of opportunities, so not just all research and no teaching, but a mixture of teaching and research. There have been development and or refining graduate student handbooks to really ensure that all fellows have the same information. Identification of graduate student pathways, again, to make sure all fellows understand kind of requirements, but also the different ways that, you can earn your degree and what it might look like, depending on your focus. There's been strong suggestions in some cases of students developing individual development plans. I don't think in any cases can be required. So this is for them to use a tool to guide discussions with advisors and mentors, again, to help faculty see them in a more rounded way and help advise them beyond just academics or research, but in how to be a good communicator and how to do visual displays. I mean, just so many different ways. Mentor training for faculty. We hear a lot about SOAR training and faculty undergoing that again to improve their advising skills and mentoring skills. And then providing graduate students opportunities to present research at faculty meetings so they get to know more faculty get to know them, more graduate students get to know each other, or discuss considerations important to them. This can be like what it's like to be an underrepresented minority student in STEM, whether it's, with faculty, whether it's a coffee just for other graduate students, etc. So there are activities that are being undertaken across the universities to try and better support students. It's, most of these are geared towards all students because a lot of these departments have very few numbers right now of underrepresented minority students as defined by NSF. But the thought being that, we can put our efforts, there's no reason not to put these efforts in and try and support all students. I want to look at the AGEP-NC model, the proposed and the in reality, because again, as I said, that logic model is very linear. Reality is always a different mix. I joke about this when I talk about NSF projects. I know this recording is going to be shared with the NSF, but it's just reality. Let's just face it. Fellows engage in co-op learning and assess making with each other, guided by a PI. That really did happen, although I think COVID did negatively affect some of this cohort learning. Not hugely, but just a little bit. It should be noted. Fellows share their learning within departments to support departmental sense making. They did do this, although I don't think there was much sense making. I think departments really looked for fellows to guide everything. In some cases, they gave feedback on department plans, but in some cases, they just took in the information. In some places, sometimes they didn't even show up to get the information. So this really was more info sharing, I think, than sense making among departmental members. Fellows in departments draft department diversity plans, which are ultimately approved. Again, I talked about an approval process. In some cases, just not ever going to happen. Fellows tended to draft these diversity plans, usually alone. I think I would say mostly alone. Maybe half and half alone. I'm going to change that. Most of the time, they shared them with department heads for feedback, and then with departments. Few faculty provided feedback, not all faculty approved plans. Again, for some, that approval process is just red tape. In other cases, they did get approved. Department diversity plans are implemented. Again, there is more implementation than approved plans, and I'm aware of that. Whether approved or not, implementation plans were usually instituted by the fellow. And that is really true. Again, there's just really been a push by fellows. That is both good and that is both bad because it brings up the issue of sustainability. Should that fellow leave the institution, the department, even their role, if they take on a different role where they don't have the time anymore, it's hard to understand whether these efforts will be sustained. In some cases, absolutely not. In some cases, efforts have happened and will be there. So again, like the coffee, the kind of coffee for graduate students or changes to the handbook that is there, but will all ongoing changes be made? It's hard to say. So, the reality of putting this on one fellow, because in some cases that's what it was, I'm not sure that worked in every case. This definitely worked best when the department chair supported them and when there were DEI committees already involved. And so that goes to my final, I think is my final slide, the viability of the AGEP-NC model. So, I think the slide previous really is the current kind of model. I showed you the reality of how it is modeling. There's affected by so many things, the university context around DEI, which I've discussed, the fellows, their role and their power level, how powerful they are seen by their peers. University governance structures, department head support, department faculty commitment to change. I heard a lot that older, which I think they meant maybe more veteran, faculty tended to be resistance to change by doing something that looks pretty good to me, was their attitude. It's not my attitude. Certainly the number of underrepresented minority students in the department, because some just didn't see a need for it. You know, we don't have these students. Why do we have to worry about it? Not thinking about why maybe they don't get these students. So. Who knows? Right now, I don't have evidence of adoption by other institutions. Certainly, you know, as there have been second and third cohorts, you know, there are other departments within the current institutions that are, you know, have wanted to engage in this model. So there is that part for sure. So that's kind of where things stand. It is not done. You heard me say, oh, I would change my, you know, thoughts around some of this. As I talk to more fellows in particular, you know, I'll be, you know, revising my assessments. But that's kind of where things stand. And I don't know if we're out of time, but if we are, I really would love to talk to anybody who has thoughts about this, whether you've talked before in the past, and also if there are any fellows here that I haven't talked with, I really would love to talk with you from any of the institutions, all institutions. So please, I would love to set up a time, honestly, for next week. I'd like to keep the momentum rolling on this. So, thoughts, questions, comments?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The last little bit of the meeting is going to be Adam Reitzel from the Department of Biological Sciences here at UNC Charlotte, who is part of the first cohort here, and one of those that, well, the person that got their diversity plan in first from our campus ain't got it approved. So he's going to give you some thoughts.
Hey everybody, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So I was giving a pretty general, I could talk about pretty much anything, so thank you. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience as a fellow in cohort 1 here at UNC Charlotte. So that was 2019 to 2020, so we've been through a pandemic, we're in a pandemic. And I think a little bit about my experience, and I think actually more importantly, what I perceive as our sort of department's experience, which I think is more important. A little bit about why I got involved, and then a little bit about what we plan to do, and what we've done, and what we're going to do. Now, we're maybe going to do what we're going to do. Yeah. So a little bit about why I got involved, and I know I'm on the clock. So a little bit where it started for me was actually before AGEP became an opportunity, which was I went to university, well, I grew up from birth until postdoc. I was in primarily white institutions, or towns, or cities, etc. Okay? And thinking back last night, I think in all my graduate and postdoctoral experience, there was one underrepresented minority student or postdoc, total. And she was African American. She's an awesome friend of mine. And so that kind of puts in, Lisa was saying, kind of like what people she's interviewing, mentors, what we don't know, right? That's a perfect example, all the things you don't know. So mentoring Devin, who was a master's student with myself and another faculty member, Richard Chee, rock star master's student. And I learned by mentoring him all the things that I now wish I would have asked him then, right? So it was a learning experience about what to ask, how to ask it. And Devin is just such a wonderful guy. It made it really easy to talk about things. He's now at Yale in a PhD program, and he's doing amazingly well. The other was actually at the exact same time, about 2017, 2018, 2019, I took part in a Charlotte Teachers Institute seminar. That's a program they have here with Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, where faculty members go have seminar classes with Charlotte-Mecklenburg teachers. Okay, so that's our teaching release. I did it with Lenora Crabtree, who was a PhD student at the time in education, and we did a seminar on what we call nurturing nature, epigenetics, and the way to explore social justice. This is 2018. And what was unique about that informative for me was that the students, the scholars, were half African American and half white. And that was a very different classroom environment for all the places I had been before. And the discussions and the points and the way to look at everything was incredibly enriched. So then I got an email from Yvette that said, looking for fellows. I said, yay. So I got involved with that in cohort 1, and I said, and with our plan being 1, as you've already heard about, is to do these diversity plans with a focus on PhD student success. What I started with is realizing I don't know what I don't know, and try the best I could, and knowing that we already had amazing faculty members in our department that were already really invested, interested, and already actively engaged in embracing and celebrating diversity within our department, Dr. Michelle Fast and Dr. Paula Lopez Duarte, who are just tremendous colleagues, endless energy, and wonderful people. So someone I'm telling you about today, the first lesson was don't do it alone. And seek good partners who know more than you do, and team up together to get things done. The second lesson was have great leadership that you can talk to. One of them's in the room. I didn't know she was going to be here, but I would have said it all anyway, thank you. So at the time, we since had a chair change. Pinka was our chair at the time. She's now interim dean for the graduate school. At that time, I was just just faculty member. At that time, Christine Richardson was the graduate program director. Now I'm the graduate program director. Christine's the chair of this department. So the joke for our AGEP group was if you become a fellow, you become a GPD 1 year later. Because that's what happened for most of us, which is great. And I'm doing that role now about 2.5 years in. Okay, so how did we do it? And maybe this comes back to a little bit what Amy was saying, was that we did a sort of iterative process. So we did it with discussions at faculty meetings. We had discussions, we have an annual faculty retreat where we specifically make time to talk about diversity and inclusion in our department. What are we doing? What could we do? What are we doing that we could do better? Lots of one-on-one coffee. It's been mostly through Zoom at that time, if I remember right. And sit-down meetings with both of these two wonderful. And that's how we kind of hashed out the rough ideas of like, what are the things we wanted to focus on? What's already happening in the department, right? What could we be doing? Then I kind of drafted it out, typed out all the best I could, circulated as a Google Doc. I love Google. Google's probably listening, I hope. Google makes life better for everybody to comment on within our department. And some people do, some people don't, and that's cool, right? Take all that in, edit, repeat. Go to the chair one more time. This is what we got. And stamp of approval. Yay! So then we submit that. We got more feedback from our AGEP leadership, and we're done. Okay. So writing the plan is easy, it turns out. It was hard, but it's easy compared to implementing. But that's again where we, through this process, we had so much buy-in, and so much existing buy-in, I think, from just our department, that it kind of made it fun. And it's still working, which is great. So what was in that? We had a number of action items. They've actually stayed pretty much the same. I was telling about those. Like some of them have collapsed and some have expanded, of course. And so here's what's happened. I'll just do a quick summary of that. So one was we didn't have an existing DEI committee, and so that was one of our action items was we need to form a committee and we need to structure it so we have permanence on this issue so it doesn't blip in, blip out. So that now exists. You'll see that in a little bit. Our second was to revamp our website to showcase what our department actually really is. The diversity in our department going from faculty and staff, postdocs, graduate and undergraduate students. Across the board, highlight them all, celebrate them all. That's what we should be doing. I bet if we could go back and frame grab our website from back then and compare the two, we would be surprised, I think, at how much it's changed. And it's all been put down. Some snapshots coming up. Third was we planned to and then implemented ways to establish and support our communities for our graduate and undergraduate students. Again, this is the activity of multiple faculty, certainly not just me. Also to provide opportunities for interaction and sort of just communication. See, as we come back in person, especially Dr. Pass has really done a lot of this, and you see some of that, it's been amazing. How do you get more buy-in from those faculty that are like, I don't need more? The way that we did it, and it was super easy, was that we added DEI as part of our annual merit for faculty. So, so just formalize this as part of our process for how we both showcase and highlight what we've done, and how through our review committee can review that as part of our work we do as faculty each year. And then lastly, it's kind of a focus was more focus on mentor, mentee, and peer-peer mentoring. This is a really hard one.
I just wanted to add, we were trying to do that for every department in CLAS, and it didn't pass. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's something we should really revisit again. As, you know, it's not like they have to put what they've done for DEI, but if they do, everybody else gets to see what they're doing. But I think the buy-in is, you know, throughout campus is not there.
Well, hopefully it'll come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Baby steps.
But you need things that people can, you know, because some people want to be measured, right? We don't want to be measured. We want to be, we want to put something down, so we've been prioritizing this something we do, right? And sometimes that's not. Okay. So just a couple snapshots, and then I'll stop talking. This, you know, establishing this DEI committee. This was again really easy, actually, it turned out, because we had so much buy-in, if you will, across each department. It's composed of faculty, postdocs, graduate, and undergraduate students, and we found that to be important and essential. We need voices, because we don't know what we don't know, and we need to hear from everybody. They need to feel like they have a voice that's listened to and then incorporated into what this department does. Huge. It's in our bylaws, so it stays forever. I don't think bylaws, nothing ever leaves, it doesn't seem like. They just get longer and longer. So it's in the bylaws for life, hopefully. And then the director, who's Dr. Pass, you know, it's a formal title. Hopefully it'll come with a stipend or something one day for her. Yeah, so she's the director of it. And importantly, we added into the plan was that who's ever in this position is on the advisory committee, which then has regular meetings with the chairs. So one voice at that table every month is someone who's focused on DEI. So that we thought was really important. The same way as research and teaching, they should have an equal voice at that table all the time. We do monthly meetings, which are great. We also added a form for students, both an anonymous and a non-anonymous form. And that's for everything from like good ideas, good things they've seen, to problems. And so we wanted to have both options available so we can learn more about what's going on in our department. Okay. And you can go see the page there before you Google it. That's easier. We talked about the revamp of the website. This is the snapshot of parts of the current website. This is the current news. Just to kind of show you like the things that we do now in our department, which I think have a measurable impact. There was some skepticism, I remember at faculty retreat, that they said, no one cares what's shown on a website. I'm like, are you nuts? Like, if people see themselves in your group of, you know, this is important, they're going to want to be a part of it, right? And I think there's no doubt. We also have a great letter from our current chair, Christine. This is a sort of snippet of it, which I think really captures the sort of importance of this for our general faculty. This is what Dr. Pass has led, as well as other members of the DEI committee. So it's kind of building community in the department. Most of biology is sitting in one building right now. We're kind of now fragmenting to other buildings, but the core of a lot of biology is in one place. So they set up a sort of a whiteboard style where they put a question of the week or the month, whatever, and there's lots of contributions. And students really engage in that. They go in, they write on, they read other people's things, et cetera. They're kind of prompts, et cetera. We also have just posters of what are all the research labs. So the research spaces are separated from our teaching spaces. So we have a 1,200, like I think it's 1,200 majors or something, 1,300, And most of them don't even know that we do research. It's amazing, right? Well, it's amazing to us, but that's because we're like this, you know? So just having this results in engagement where students go into their teaching labs are like, oh, look at all these undergraduates doing research. How do I do it? Oh, they do cool yeast stuff or whatever, right? So this is one way to bridge communication between and bring awareness, especially for our undergraduate students. Some more in our biology department printouts of the I Am a Scientist. If you haven't seen the site, it's amazing. So again, just seeing, you know, different people based on whatever criteria they'd like to use, in this case mostly racial. I'm saying they're all scientists, right? Lots of ways to be a scientist. Anybody can be a scientist. You belong. Similarly, implemented a map. It's like pushpin, where am I from? Where have I been? Again, just more kind of, oh wow, there's somebody else from Iceland at this campus. Wouldn't that be cool? I don't know if there is anybody from Iceland. I just made that up. But anyway, these are the student groups. So we have Black students in science, undergraduate primarily. SACNAS, it was mostly with biology to kick it off, and now it's multi sort of a college department with SACNAS. So for that, we contacted a friend of ours at the University of Florida, started a SACNAS chapter there, and she helped us start a SACNAS chapter here. And this past fall, there was a group of students and faculty that went to SACNAS in Puerto Rico and had a table, et cetera, and then the minority system of pre-knowledge. So these are some groups, again, for students can come together and learn from each other and start to build a community, which we think is the most important. For the graduate student organizations, we have an amazing group of graduate students who spend a lot of time trying to make our department, and I would argue this university, a much better place to be. ABSGS, Association of Biological Sciences, graduate students, a mouthful. And this is one thing they're doing that they started last year, which are these meet and greets. Basically, they set up 2 rooms on campus. One has food and one has science. And the idea is they have to go talk to scientists or like labs, and then they get to eat